Hello, I'm April Davila for Sit Right Here, and this is First Page Fridays, where we read and edit one of your first pages submitted anonymously. Thank you to the author who sent in their page for today. We're going to start by just reading it through, and then we'll jump back to the top, and I'll walk you through. I'll kind of vocalize my thoughts as I edit so that you can get a glimpse into the things that editors look for, the things that agents look for, and publishers for that matter. And so that we can all learn from each other, and we'll look at what's working, what could be better. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you are looking for a deeper edit, reach out to us. This is what our team does. We dig in with our clients line for line and work on making the manuscripts just as good as they can be. So let's jump into it here. And again, I haven't read this yet, so please forgive me if I mispronounce. I'm doing my best. Emsie cuddled closer to Pa's shirt. It was warm and soft, not like the scratchy material of the couch. She took a deep breath. It smelled of sawdust, with a lingering whiff of his aftershave from that morning. On the other side of the big couch, her little sister Betsy sat with Ma. In the summer, nearly everything was a rerun, but the family always went to the living room to watch television together after supper. In winter, Pa would turn on the tall lamp with its dusty shade and put a yellow glow over everything. However, now it was summer, and the sun did an even better job at this. Ma had to close the long, flowery drapes because the western sun threw such a glare on the screen that no one could see what was happening on the television. Before Betsy was born, Emsie had been careful to take turns sitting in Ma's lap one evening and Pa's lap the next. Most kids would say they loved their mother better, but Pa was Emsie's hero. He was always ready to help her no matter what was wrong, from a wasp in the house to a dentist appointment. "It's gone now, Emsie," he would say, or, "If you need me, I'll be in the waiting room, but you'll be okay." Just thinking about it put a smile on Emsie's face, but it also put a lump in her throat for reasons she couldn't understand. All right. Oh, and Away with Fairies. Away with the Fairies. Got a title there. All right, so we get our main character right off the bat, Emsie. We get Pa, we get Ma. Our system tends to ruin formatting, so I'm going to do my best to put it back, but forgive me if I get it wrong. Emsie cuddled closer to Pa's shirt. It was warm and soft, not like the scratchy material of the couch. Okay, so this is a great way to drop us into the scene, right? We get, right from that first sentence, we get that Emsie is young, she's small because she's cuddling closer to her Pa. He's warm and soft. We also get the fact that, like, Pa's warm and soft. He's a safe place versus the scratchy material of the couch. That's a great sensory detail. She took a deep breath. It smelled of sawdust. Now I assume that's the breath, but I wonder if we could say what smelled of sawdust. Maybe his shirt smelled of sawdust with a lingering whiff of aftershave from that morning. On the other side of the big couch, here, I might even do this. On the other side of the big couch, her little sister Betsy sat with Ma. So these are our four characters. You don't really want to go more than four characters on a first page. It's a lot to keep track of. But things like Ma and Pa are easy to keep track of. And that kind of gives a little more space to the page. Whereas if it were four named characters, it might be harder to keep track of. So on the other side of the big couch, her little sister Betsy sat with Ma. In the summer, nearly everything was a rerun, but the family always went to the living room to watch television together after supper. I would say don't jump away from the scene. In the winter, Pa would turn on the tall lamp with its dusty shade and put a yellow glow on everything. I would just go and keep us here. This is a lovely scene. The sun. All right, yeah. I would just cut this. Ma had to close the long flower before we sat down. Ma had to close the long flowery drapes because the western sun threw such a glare on the screen that no one could see what was happening on the television. Before Betsy was born. Now I wonder how long has it been since Betsy was born? Because right now we know Emsie is young, but I mean this could be a precocious 3-year-old or a kind of childish 10-year-old, and we don't really have any sense of it yet. Or often, like, developmentally, kids will go through phases where they want some independence, but then they also want to cuddle. Like, that can happen into the teens even. So I'd be very curious to get a sense of how old is Emsie. And then how long has it been since Betsy was born? Like before Betsy was, like you could say 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And again, I am just making that up because I don't know your story. But if you say 2 years ago before, then we know Betsy is around 2, right? Or maybe a little under 2. MZ had been careful to take turns sitting in Ma's lap one evening and Pa's lap the next. This is a very aware young child, but believably aware. Like there's some underlying tension there when a child feels like they need to be that diplomatic with their parents. Most kids would say they loved their mother better, but Pa was MZ's hero. And then we kind of get into more generalizations. I would love to stay in this scene and the thing that's kind of missing. So always good to drop us into a scene. The thing that's kind of missing here is what does this character want? The bigger question of either the scene or the story, that's what makes readers turn the page. So even though this is lovely, it's a lovely scene, and the characters are definitely starting to come into focus, I'm not that engaged because I don't know what the question is. There's nothing here that I'm like, oh, I need to know how that ends. And that can be on the scene for scene level or the whole story level. And you can watch some of the other videos for examples of that, but if you can hint at the story to come, pose some sort of question that needs answering. Now you want to be careful that it's a question that spurs us to want to read on versus something that just feels like an omission, which can just feel jarring. So and again, I don't know your story, so it's hard for me to put the words in there, but maybe I can come up with an example. So on the other side of the big couch, so we've already got, okay, I'm going to try to come up with an example here. Before we sat down, Ma had to close the long flowery blinds on the television. You get something like, tonight was the night we would find out if, who's the winner on the TV show or whatever. Right? It doesn't have to be a big question. There just has to be some sort of, that's not a great example. A good example would be something like this would be, I didn't know it yet, but this was our last night together. Because then instantly our human instinct of like, oh no, what happens? That question kicks in. Now, again, I think I will just leave it at that because I don't want to try to guess what your story is. But when we start jumping into generalizations, we lose the scene. And I don't think that we've grabbed the reader and pulled them in deep enough yet to let go. We need to find the thing that is going to hook them and make them turn the page again. The other thing to consider, so I'm just going to kind of push that part down. Think of what the question is you can pose. The other thing is that there's real opportunity here. He smells of sawdust and a lingering whiff of aftershave. So I'm picturing someone who works in a sawmill, I guess, more of a blue collar worker. That's a hint there. But could you give us a hint of like, she's cuddled up to him. Is he soft or are his muscles hard? Like, is he someone who does hard labor and he's got like really tough guy shoulders that might be really like, I don't know, comforting for her to snuggle up against, that kind of strength? Or is it the kind of cuddle up against where he's a little softer? Maybe he's not muscly, but like you can start to give us hints of like, is he a tall man and a short man, a rounder, skinnier, whatever his, you have that close proximity where you're already talking about it. It's a natural place to put in some details about what does Pa look like? Or maybe as she cuddles up, she looks up and sees the dark stubble on his chin and he smiles down with his blue eyes or his brown eyes or his hazel eyes, whatever, start to give us a picture of him. On the other side of the couch, and we already said the couch, so the scratchy material of the couch. On the other side of, so maybe finding another way to say this, on the other side of the room, on the other end of the sofa. Let's say the other end of the sofa. On the other end of the sofa, her little sister Betsy sat with Ma. Now, again, opportunity. Ma, Okay, so scenes are a certain number of people in a certain place at a certain time. We have this certain number of people. We have a place, but it could use a little more definition. We're on the couch in the living room. We know that it's summer, which is great. So that's the particular time. So a certain number of people in a certain place at a certain time. It's summer, it's evening. We know that the girls are younger, but we don't know exactly how young. So start to think about how you can get that specific place and specific time dialed in a little bit. If this is the 1950s and Ma is someone who stays home and takes care of the girls, maybe she's taking off her apron to snuggle up with Betsy, or what would, like, I don't know, versus like a modern day Ma who maybe is like scrolling on her phone with one hand while holding Betsy in the other. And maybe Betsy's holding a bottle, or what kind of, is Betsy in pajamas, or is she the kind of baby who gets dressed up in a cute little outfit? So again, you can start to hint at like socioeconomic. If Betsy and Ma are wearing like pristine matching dresses, that's a very different Betsy and Ma than a baby who's in like last year's hand-me-downs, and Ma who is taking off her apron and her house dress is old and has like holes at the hem. You know, you can start to put some of those details in to tell us a little bit more about this family. And that's the beauty of those kinds of details, is that if you tell us that Ma is taking off her apron and her house dress is older and has some holes at the hem, we know this is a family that maybe is struggling financially. It's a very traditional setup of a family where Mom stays home, Dad is out doing work with the sawdust. I don't know exactly what, some sort of woodworking job. But you can start to really build out the reality of this family for us by dropping some of those details. Even things like, well, so like the flowery drapes is a great example. Flowery drapes means somebody, presumably Ma, took the time to make and or buy flowery drapes and hang them. Let's see, and so the glare on the screen, you could talk about how, like, I'm kind of picturing this as like an old, not modern day, like not a long time ago, but somewhere like mid-century. Well, I mean, I guess it has to be when television was invented or later, but like I'm thinking like 1960s-ish, where the television would be like a big hulking thing on a stand, right? And it would take up a whole corner of the room versus a flat screen. So getting those little details in will start to land us in the time, in the place, with these people, and with the specifics of who they are. But probably the most important thing would be to get in that question, something where the reader is like, oh, I need to know. I gotta know. Like, so again, that line, like, this, I didn't know it yet, but this would be the last time that we all sat together. Or you could say something like, there was something I needed to ask Pa, but I couldn't do it when Mom was in the room, right? And then we're like, ooh, how's she going to get Pa alone? What's the question? Why doesn't she want Mom to know? Like, you want to open up that little bit of like, ooh, I need to know the answer to that in this first page. That's what really hooks readers and keeps them reading. So while the writing is lovely on this, I think you can dig in a little bit more, find that question, give us a few more details of the setting, and it'll be that much more engaging. So on top of the lovely writing, you can add those other things and readers will just be pulled directly into your story. All right, I hope that was helpful. Thank you to the author who sent it in their page. This doesn't work without you. Thank you, thank you. If this is not your page and you would like to send yours in, there is a link in the comments below. You can send it in, we'll put it in the queue, and we will read your page on one of these First Page Fridays. Until then, happy writing, my friends. I'll see you next time.